inspiring you to build the life of your dreams by teaching you how to create a career you love. This is the Job Lab Podcast with your host, Nick Murphy.
Hey there, my friend, and welcome to the Job Lab Podcast. This is the show that helps you close the gap between where you are and where you want to be in your career. My name is Nick J. Murphy, and I'm your host. Thank you for each and every one of you that have taken time out of your busy day to spend some of it with me. You frequent listeners, you literally mean the world to me that you come back each and every week. For you new listeners, go ahead and take a second and press subscribe on whatever app it is that you're listening to right now to make sure that you never miss an episode. And if you find yourself wanting more than just one episode a week, I've got you covered. Just text Never Settle to 44222 to enroll in the Daily Dose. It's my 100% free email filled with quick wins and limitless career inspiration. If you missed episode 22 with Kim Hott, stop what you're doing and go check it out right this second before you even listen to this episode. On that show, Kim and I discuss how to build quick rapport with an interviewer, what to say when you don't have an answer to a key question, and then Kim takes us through her STAR method to help you take any question you're asked and create a compelling answer that lands you the job. So if you or someone you know is coming up on a job interview or expects they could be interviewing soon, go back and check out episode 22 right now. Today's guest is Goli Kalkhoran. Goli was a standout attorney turned entrepreneur, and in our conversation, we get into how she knew it was time to walk away from law, how she handled the pushback of peers and friends, and then she shares her advice for someone that's just not feeling their career path anymore. As always, there's some amazing stories and great lessons to be learned. So without further ado, let's get right into it. My guest today is Goli Kalkhoran. Goli is a lawyer, entrepreneur, podcast host, speaker, and mother. She received her law degree from Usie Berkeley and worked as a federal public defender, focusing exclusively on death penalty appeals. In 2014, after finding herself unhappy, she quit practicing law altogether in order to find a more fulfilling career. Her various experiences led her to start a company called Usie Booth, which provides an innovative approach to photo booths for both events and brands. And because of her experience, Goli recently launched Lessons from a Quitter podcast, which is just a great name, by the way, where she highlights the stories of other people who have quit professional careers to forge their own path and create a life that they love. She hopes to inspire people who feel stuck in their careers to take the plunge and try something new. Goli, thanks for being here. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
I absolutely love the name of your podcast, by the way. Lessons from a Quitter. That's amazing.
Obviously, it's tongue-in-cheek, but I do think that it has like a bad connotation to quit. And I sort of realized in my experience, if you're not happy in something, you definitely should quit. And so I'm sort of trying to change that connotation to something good.
I love it. And I want to just dig right into your story. I've got probably more questions than I normally do, but let's just dig right into it. Take me back to pre-law school. What were you chasing and why did you land on law?
I think a lot of people, law is interesting because people go for a lot of various different reasons. For me, I was actually one of the strange people that wanted to be a lawyer since I was a child. And I don't really know where that came from. I mean, seriously, from when I was maybe 8 or 9 years old, I had started saying I was going to be a lawyer and it never changed. It was something that, I was good in school. And so I could kind of go down that path. I didn't have a lot of resistance. Like I took tests, I did well, I got good grades, I got into a good college. And so I just kept going down this path. And it sort of seems silly to say that it's the path of least resistance, but it is. There's a path laid out for you and you just follow it along. And I never questioned it. I didn't know any lawyers. I didn't know in my family, there wasn't, people that I could model to see what they do day to day. And so I'm not really sure what I thought a lawyer did, but it was just something, this goal I had put in front of myself and I just worked towards it and I never questioned it. And I went to law school, I was lucky enough to get into a great law school and I actually loved law school. I'm very fascinated by the law and I really enjoy learning about it and the theory behind it and all of that stuff. And so, I just kind of went down this path and really the rude awakening sort of happened once I actually became a lawyer and I realized that the day-to-day is nothing like what I had expected. And I finally started questioning like, hey, what did I think this was going to be? And why did I want it so badly?
So as you reflect back on that, I remember I wanted to be a lawyer at one point. I was a political science major in undergrad for a second. And then I realized, well, wait a minute, I have to go to 3 years of law school. And I took the pre-LSAT, the little 10 questions where I've never in my life seen 6 answers to a multiple choice question that are all a paragraph long with like 1 word difference. And I looked at it and school was easy for me too. And I remember going, I don't even know how this happens. So you might be the only person I've ever talked to in my life that enjoyed law school. Most people, and I've always had this, I'd love to ask your opinion. Do you think people that are in law school, it's just a really great way to protect the base, right? Like if we tell everybody law school sucks, no one will want to become lawyers and we'll have more business. Or does law school really, really suck for most people?
I think it's the latter answer. It does suck for most people. And I think here's the reason. It very much depends on the law school you go to. And the reason I say that is because unlike medical school, where it is very difficult to get into a medical school in America, and you have to be at the top of whatever class you are, and the MCAT is very difficult. Law schools, there are tons and tons of law schools because it's a moneymaker for them. So they're very, it's like a ranked system. So there's, highly ranked schools, and then there's a lot of schools that aren't even accredited. And to me, it's a scam because they're charging hundreds of thousands of dollars, and a lot of their graduates don't get the education they need to get. And so the problem with law school is that a lot of people just end up going to it because they have no idea what they want to do. So they graduate college, they're not ready to go out into the world, they don't know what job they want. And so they're like, oh, should I do business school? Should I do law? I'll just do law school. And so it's not people that actually enjoy the law or have a real reason of like why they want to be a lawyer. And in a lot of the other law schools, it's very cutthroat because in order to get a job, you have to be like at the top 10%. It's a very competitive environment. It's very cutthroat. A lot of other schools, like you get kicked out if you have like certain grades that are below a certain standard. So it's very stressful. I mean, at Berkeley, the reason I probably loved it is because it was the first time in my life, there's no grades, it's pass fail. And so like that whole pressure is relieved. And so it's really, you're there just to learn and be a part of this academic environment. So I felt for the first time that I wasn't trying to get some kind of grade and studying for that purpose. I was actually learning really interesting things. I think the difference for me is I really was interested in the law firm before I even went to college. And so that's why I liked it. But I do see, I agree with you, the majority of people I talked to didn't like law school. And I just think it's a very cutthroat, high stress environment.
So you obviously loved law school, but so many people don't. You got into one of the elite law programs around at UC Berkeley. Did being in that program, you just touched on it a little bit about the grades and kind of feeling a little of the pressure taken off as far as performance in specific classes, but did being at Berkeley in that law program put pressure on you that you didn't anticipate?
Yes. I mean, I think it puts pressure on you. I mean, when you're there, yes. I think we all suffer from imposter syndrome. And I remember the first week or two that I was there. I mean, you meet the most incredible people from around the world. And, there's international students in their LLM programs that are like judges in their countries or, all these, and you kind of feel like, what am I doing here? How did I get in? Like, I shouldn't be here, And so there definitely is that kind of pressure. And I think afterwards, one of the reasons I stayed and one of the things I struggled with a lot when I was quitting is you already feel like, oh, I've put in all this time or, I went to law school, I spent 3 years. But to me, there was an added pressure because people would always say like, but you went to Berkeley Law School, like you went to this great program and now you're just going to stop practicing. Like you have this degree that can help open so many doors and you have all this network. So why would you leave? And so there was a lot of that where I had put that on myself too. Like, am I really going to walk away after I've kind of achieved this high level of, education and whatnot? So I do think there was that pressure.
We're going to dig into that really, really deeply here because I want people to understand that. And I know you have just a fascinating kind of perspective on that whole thing. But when was you get out of Berkeley, you started practicing, you touched on it at the beginning that you realized, you really don't enjoy being a lawyer. When was the first time you started to see the writing on the wall? And how long did it take you to turn that into something that was more of a pressing thing that you just had to fix by getting out?
So when I got out of law school, I went to a large law firm and I knew because I had gone to law school to kind of work in social justice causes. So I knew that wasn't going to be for me. So I wasn't surprised that I wasn't happy with the work there. I went because they paid a lot of money. I wanted to pay off my debt. And so while I was working there, I sort of expected to be unhappy. When it really came about was when I quit and I got a job as a federal public defender, which was something I thought was going to be my dream job. And I had just thought that this is it. Like, I'm going to stay here for the rest of my career and this is going to be magical. And very quickly, like within the first month, I was sort of this, oh my God, like it's all the same. It's all the same type of work. It's Tom Hanks in an interview, like in one interview, they asked him what job he would least like. And he said, being a lawyer, because it's like doing homework every day of your life. And that's the best description of what being a lawyer is. It really feels like you're just in a room by yourself, reading and writing these very long and boring motions or contracts or whatever type of law you're doing. And so I'm a gregarious person. I'm outgoing. I like being sociable and talking to people. And I felt just so depressed being in an office by myself 16 hours a day, 12 hours a day, 13 hours a day, just writing. And so it was very quickly that I realized I'm not going to like it. But that said, I never even thought that I could do something else. Like I had sort of resigned the fact that, okay, I've worked this many years to get here and now I'm a lawyer and I have this good job and I shouldn't complain and I'm just going to do it. And I did that for about 4 years. And there was parts of the job I did like, but I did it. And it just happened that when I quit that job because we were moving, I had to quit. And I moved from Arizona to California and it coincided with me having my first son that I was taking some time off and I was dreading trying to look for a job again. And my husband was the one that kept saying, well, if you don't like it this much, like, why don't you look for something else? And I remember like rolling my eyes and being like, what are you talking about? Like, what else can I do? I can't do anything else. Like, I'm a lawyer. And it was in those discussions, like, God bless him, because he had planted this seed that I started really thinking like, wait, could I do something else? Like, is it okay for me to try to look for something else? And that was really the start of this like year-long journey. It took me almost a year to really admit to myself that I wanted to quit, because I think you get so stuck in this identity of what you are and what you've done. And you think about everything that you've invested, and it's very difficult to break away from that.
So I think you just touched on something that so many people feel, whether they're attorneys or any other profession. It sounds to me, and correct me if I'm wrong here, like, you took this job out of college knowing, hey, I at least won't have debt. I'll get a bunch of money. I graduated from Cal. I'm going to go make this money and then go find some other facet of the law that I find more enjoyable. When you switch to the public defender side, it sounds like you were looking for more of the cause. Like you want to do law. You still had this like law bubble that you were living in, but you wanted to do something in the law that you would feel more fulfilled by. And I think a lot of people resonate with that. It makes a lot of sense, right? I think it's good advice for a lot of people, but it didn't work for you. So what would you advise someone to do? And how long do you suggest that they give it to come to the conclusion that you came to, where, you know what, as long as I'm working in law, I'm just not going to be happy?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. It is a difficult one. Everyone's answer is going to be different. But I think that a really important point is that you need to be honest with yourself about what part of the job you don't like. I think if there is something that you can fix by changing the job and not the profession, like let's say you're working in an office that's just an unhealthy environment and there's a lot of like office politics and you're just unhappy being there, that can be fixed. You can try to find a job in a different type of environment doing law, let's say. Or for me, I really spent a lot of time thinking, because I was really passionate about the cause and I was very happy about certain aspects of that kind of work. I felt very fulfilled in what I was doing in certain things. But when it came down to it, the day-to-day of what I was doing, 90% of the work I was doing, I didn't like. 10% of it, which was fighting for some cause, I liked. But the rest of it, the nuts and bolts of it, was something that I truly made me unhappy. And I know, knowing law, that any other type of law I would go into would be the same day to day. The topic might change a little bit. There might be some variances here and there. But overall, at that point, I had been practicing for about 8 years. I knew what being a lawyer meant. That's why it was so hard for me to look for a job, because I remember reading the job descriptions that I was applying for and like feeling nauseous because I knew exactly what I would be doing, and I didn't want to be doing that. And so I think that's the advice I would give, is really try to be honest with yourself, listen to your gut. Is it something within the job that can't be fixed? That's just like, that is what the job is and you don't like that, then it might be time to leave that profession. But if it's something where you enjoy, 70% of what you're doing at your job, but there's something that's making you really unhappy, you want more flexibility, you want, X, Y, and Z, then there might be a way of fixing those specific things and staying within the profession that you're already in.
85%. That's the number, according to Gallup, of unengaged or actively disengaged people in jobs. Mm-hmm. And I'd love to get your theory as to the why behind that stat, because it's pretty staggering.
It is staggering. And I mean, I don't know. I don't have a great answer. I don't think that there is like one why. I think people have a lot of different reasons. But I do, from what I've noticed for myself and from talking to other people that feel stuck, is I realize that a lot of times we work so hard to get to a certain place. We have a goal. We climb this ladder. And at a certain point, you sort of sleepwalk through your life. You've accepted, like you have the job, you get up, you go to work, you come home, you hang out with your family, you're exhausted, you watch TV, you go to sleep. We don't make a lot of time to be very conscious about what we're doing, what we like, what is lighting us up. Like you're going to change. You're going to change in your 20s and in your 30s and your 40s and your 50s. And we don't really check in with like, what makes me happy now? Like, what am I passionate about? And we don't try new things, you just stay in what you're doing. And so what I hear from a lot of people when they say they're unhappy, like one of the number one things I always hear is, I don't know what else I would do. And that's how I felt. I literally felt like there was nothing else. I just focused on law for so long. I didn't know what else I would do. But the problem is that we don't ever make an effort to find out, It's like you're expecting something to just show up and it's not going to. So you have to make time and space and be really conscious of like, okay, I'm not happy. And I know there's a million other jobs out there. So maybe I should take some time and experiment, take a class or go to networking events or talk to other people, do informal interviews. But we don't ever do that kind of stuff. So we just sit in a rut that we're unhappy in. And that over time compounds, your unhappiness, like year after year, you feel like your life is wasting away and you're doing something you don't like. But we're not taking any kind of step to really understand who we are at this point and what really lights us up and what do we consider success and what do we want for our life right now. My life right now with 2 small children is going to be very different than my life will be in 10 or 15 years. And so I think that's why you see so many people in those positions, is because they don't know what to do to get out. And so they just keep doing the same thing over and over and over again. And obviously it's just going to be the same result.
One of the things that you talked to me about when we were discussing kind of some of the ideas that we could discuss on this show based on your experience was this notion of a sunken cost fallacy. And I'd love to have you explain that to the listeners, because I think you nailed it on the head. So many people you just described, I'm sure a lot of listeners are sitting there shaking their head going, yeah, that's pretty much what I do. And I don't know what else to do. And I don't know where to start thinking about that, let alone how to take action on it. How do we continue to justify that to ourselves? The sunken cost fallacy is fascinating.
Yeah, it is very fascinating. And we do it all the time. So a sunk cost is basically an investment that you've made into something, whether it's money, time, energy, that you can never recover. Okay. And usually if you can't recover that shouldn't, a rational decision, like that won't play into your decision because that money is gone, that time is gone. But as human beings, we don't make rational decisions. And so a lot of times we are more attached to what we've invested in. And so we will see it through because we don't want to waste or for whatever reason. So like a very classic example is, we've all done this, is let's say you pay for a movie and you go in and 30 minutes in, 45 minutes in, you hate the movie, like it's a bad movie, but you stay and you watch the whole thing and you're worse off. You've just lost another hour and a half, but you just feel like I've already paid for this movie. I'm here. I should just sit through it. We do this kind of stuff all the time. But with careers, it's even more, right? It's even stronger. Like for me, and I know a lot of lawyers who are unhappy are people that have gone to get graduate degrees. You've spent so many years and so much money getting to where you are, to get that degree. And then you start getting these jobs and you're climbing this corporate ladder and you're getting to better positions and whatnot. And so even though you're miserable and even though you're going to waste more time being unhappy, you're going to, you're worse off staying in it. You have this thing of like, I've already put so much into it. I can't walk away now, which is just the wrong kind of thinking, right? Like I remember someone saying to me, I wasted all of my 20s going to law school and becoming a lawyer. And, I responded, well, why are you wasting your 30s then, working in the same thing that you hate? And they didn't have an answer, but they still wouldn't quit, And so that's what a sunken cost fallacy is for whatever reason, you put so much attachment to that investment that you will never recover. Like that is gone. And I'm not saying it's gone. Like you have obviously learned a lot of skills. It has taught you a lot of lessons. It has gotten to you to where you are. And that in and of itself can help you in the next step into your next career. But we have such a hard time detaching away from that and walking away from that investment. We just keep following through, even though we're going to be worse off as we follow through.
So many of us use money to justify that unhappiness, right? And your friends and your peer group will back this up. If you're in a really successful role, like say your first job out of law school, if you're making $250,000 straight out of law school or more, and someone says, well, they're making a lot less than that and they're struggling financially, and they go, gosh, what I wouldn't give to be miserable at work, which I already am anyway, but make the money you're making. So for the analytical person out there that wants to poke holes in this and really wrap their head around justifying why they should take action, which, by the way, is straight up our point, I think, is you have to take that action and go find what makes you happy. But how do we calculate the opportunity cost of this job path to really nowhere?
Yeah, I mean, I think the opportunity cost, that is the main thing that you have to sort of think about is, a lot of times we think that if we stay in this safe zone, we have the money, we're getting, we have this secure job, so it's hard to leave. But you're definitely giving something up, right? The decisions you're making now have future costs for you. And so that dream job, like I said, is not going to show up. If you don't take action, you're never going to get there. And so I agree that a lot of people justify it with, a lot of people don't even have what I have, and I'm making all this money, and I don't know how I would make this amount of money. And I understand that is something very difficult that keeps you stuck. But we all know, like we've all heard millions of stories, and we all see it all the time, where somebody has a life-threatening disease, gets diagnosed with cancer or has a tragedy in their family. And all of a sudden they realize, like, that money is not what you're here for. That money is not what is going to make you happy. There's hundreds of studies that show that, like, after a certain amount, money doesn't make you, you need a certain amount to have your basic needs and all this stuff. So we all know this, but we have this disconnect where we know that money doesn't buy happiness. We know we need a certain amount to, like, have our needs met and, live a comfortable life. But above that, it's just going to be, it doesn't add to your happiness. Yet we have a very hard time implementing those things unless we have some kind of, like I said, huge breaking point, some kind of illness or tragedy or whatnot. And so I think being conscious of that and really realizing and wondering, why do I need to have a death in my family or a near-death experience or some kind of scare to show me that, like, my life is very precious, and, you're not guaranteed tomorrow. You don't know what's going to happen in the next year and the next 10 years. And, like, what do you really want to be spending your time doing while you're here? You need to start thinking more, again, consciously about, like, is that money making me happy? Like, how much money do I really need? If you sit down and you start realizing, like, what could I live off of that I would be just as happy? And how can I find a job that would provide that? Or how can I save or create, other investments that in a year or 2 years or 5 years will give me the freedom to then make a jump and try something that I actually like doing?
There's something fascinating in talking to people that have eclipsed a certain, it's almost age more than income or success level, but there comes a point in the career life cycle, as I like to think about it, where you're just in this season of your career where suddenly it's more about impact and feeling like you're making a difference. And are you serving and are you giving back? And it's not really about the money anymore. The irony in that is that the majority of those people tend to make really good money anyway by serving the right people. But to justify this cost, you went to Berkeley. I'm sure you've heard all about Daniel Kahneman and this study, but I'm going to link to this in the show notes because if you're a listener out there and you really want to, you're feeling like, yeah, I'd love to do this, but I have bills to pay. Yeah. There's a direct correlation, according to this Nobel Prize winning study from 2010, that correlates money and happiness, but only up to a point. And anytime I ever tell anybody about this study or anytime I ever talk about it, people assume that point is, well, they'll throw out a number, $250,000 or 150,000 or whatever. It's correlated with your happiness. Your income is correlated with your happiness up to $75,000. And that's it.
Yeah.
Because $75,000, you can probably put a roof over your head. You can buy food. You're not filthy rich, but you're not starving. All your basic human needs are met. And the happiness line flattens out at 75 grand, almost completely horizontally. You can make $300 million and you're not any happier than if you made $75,000. So I want people to really to think about that. And I'm going to back this up with data. We're going to put it in the show notes. But it's a really, really important thing to realize. Don't allow money to be something that pulls you into unhappiness because you think you need more money than you do to be happy.
Well, and I mean, yes, that study is so good in really laying it out. And I think what you were saying, a lot of people that move on to impact or tend to be people that have already made a certain amount of money. But the reason I think for that, I mean, beyond the fact that they probably do have more time and resources to give back, is that, again, we've all been in this situation where we think, once I get X, I'll be happy then. Once I become a lawyer, then everything will be fine. Once I get this degree, once I get this job, once I make $100,000, whatever it is. And then we get there and we've all experienced it. And that's not what's going to make you happy. And I think those people that do have made a lot of money, it was the same thing. Is you hear it again and again from people that's like, yeah, I wanted to make X and then I made it and it was the same. It wasn't all of a sudden this life-changing experience that was going to give me an abundance amount of joy. Like we all know that, we all know that like the important things in our lives are relationships and our families and how we get to spend our free time and anything we get to do that gives us joy and whatnot. Yet while we say that, we're still so conditioned to like chase money. And so I think being conscious about how much money do you really need and what makes you really happy, what is going to make you happy, and learning from these studies and other people and all these studies where they talk to people on their deathbed and their biggest regret is, I shouldn't have been trying to make so much money. I should have spent time, with the people I love and doing the things I love. And so there's a lot of stuff out there that's telling us what is going to make us happy, but we just get caught in this rat race.
Goli's dropping a ton of value. And when we get back, we're going to talk about the actions to take to identify what would actually engage you if you're feeling stuck. And most importantly, what you should do first. We're also going to play Rapid Fire right after this.
The Job Lab is brought to you by Mid-America Careers, the Midwest Career Network. Quickly search millions of jobs with a single click. Create alerts so you're the first to know when a great new job is posted. Research exciting new career opportunities and more. No matter where you are in your professional journey, Mid-America Careers can help. Visit midamericacareers.com to claim your free account today.
Welcome back. And Goli, I really wanted to pick your brain on if someone's out there feeling stuck, for the listener that goes, yep, that's me. They're raising their hand, right now on their podcast app saying, yeah, help me. What actions would you recommend that we take to identify what it is that would engage us? We're already arrived at the point where we realize what we're doing isn't sustainable. We don't like it. How do we identify what would engage us? What are some exercises and places we can look to do that? And then once you figure it out, what is the first action you should take?
Those are great questions. I wish I could give you, I know there's a bunch of articles like do these 3 things and find out what you love. The number one advice I would give you is that it takes time and it's not easy. So I don't want to shy away from doing it. I think you definitely should consistently do this and reevaluate what it is. And once you start doing it, you'll end up doing it, throughout your whole life. But a lot of what it takes is, like I said, really sitting down and giving yourself some time and space to figure out what it is you like. And so what that looked like for me was make lists of everything you like to do, not like jobs, not professions. Like literally, I like to talk to people. I like to do, and all of the things that you enjoy doing, all of the things that you don't like doing. It starts becoming clear, like what types of jobs or what types of activities you enjoy more, all of the different skills that you may have, things that that are deal breakers that you don't want to do. Another exercise that I find very useful is a lot of times we don't tend to see our own superpowers. We think the skills that we have that sometimes come natural to us, like, oh, that's just, something I do. But other people see it in us. So I would ask 2, 3, 5 people that you're very close with, that will give you honest answers, what they think you're the best at, and again, not jobs. Like it could be you are the best listener, you are the best, you connect people, or you always care about how people feel and you always want, whatever it is. It's very interesting to see yourself through other people's eyes. And a lot of times that can be really eye-opening as to skills that you have that would work in certain careers. And so that can help you kind of on that job path. But I do think once you're just more open, you're just more conscious. Like a lot of times we tend to have like tunnel vision. And like I said, you get up, you go to work, you're not looking at other opportunities. You're just focusing on what you're doing. The minute you actually start opening your eyes to other things and really admitting to yourself, like, I am unhappy and I want to try something else. You just start seeing what other people are doing. You start seeing other opportunities. You find jobs that you never knew existed. And so that sort of gets the ball rolling. But I do think the biggest advice is that you have to take action, some kind of action. It doesn't have to be big. Like I said, you can find someone on LinkedIn and message them about their job, see if they'll have a phone conversation with you, like go to a random meetup that you wouldn't normally go to that you sort of find interesting and talk to people. Like do something to get that ball rolling to start the momentum of getting you in a place to figure out what you want to do.
If you're just discovering this show, or if you've been listening for a while, but want a refresher on this topic, something that you want to dig deeper into at this point for whatever reason, go back and listen to episode 6 with Morgan Field and episode 1 with Chris Doris. They dig really into that, and Morgan's got a really great strategy for thinking about how you want to live your life and then backing your way into what your job and your career should be, which is really helpful. So, Goli, I appreciate you putting all that out there, and I really give us some encouragement here. Like when you went from Cal grad, making a boatload of money to doing the noble cause in the public defender's office and keeping people off death row. And then you told your friends and your family and your parents and anybody else. It sounded like your husband was on board, which is awesome. But you had to have some pushback when you're like, I think I'm going to walk away from this. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to start a photo booth company.
Yeah, I definitely got pushback. And beyond the pushback, I would say I thought the pushback would be a lot worse in my head. That's what kept me stuck for a long time is what would people think? What will people say? And will I look like a failure? And people are going to, talk about it behind my back and all these crazy things and I'm sure people did, but things that don't actually affect my life. And what you said, my husband was on board. And one of the best pieces of advice he gave, and it sort of put things in perspective, because I kept saying, what am I going to tell people? And he was like, how crazy that sounds that you're going to do a job for the next 30 years, 35 years. You're going to work in something you hate so that you don't have to tell people that you're not a lawyer anymore. And that really kind of put things in perspective to me. I think when you start thinking the amount of years that you have left to work and you think, I don't like what I'm doing, I sort of got to this place where I was like, I don't care. I don't care what people say. And so I got that courage. And when I got that courage and then I did get pushback, it was sort of not laughable, but it was funny to me because a lot of people were curious and they wanted to know how I was going to make it work. But the people that would be like, but why? You're such a good lawyer. And it was really funny because it was people that weren't lawyers that had never worked with me. And I was like, how do you know I'm a good lawyer? That's such a random thing to say. Or people that would say oh, it's such a waste. And I would think, what's a waste? I'm telling you, I'm not happy. It's wasteful for me to try to find something that's going to make me happy in my life, And once I had made that shift for myself, I feel like the pushback actually sort of encouraged me more to just keep doing it because I realized nobody had a reason why I should stay. It was just all the same fears that we all have been conditioned to feel. And they were just putting that fear on me. But the opposite also happened, which I would love to encourage people is a lot of times you feel you always look at the worst and it's oh my God, what are people going to say? And I'm going to look like a failure. One of the reasons I started my podcast is because I didn't realize how many people would confide in me, how miserable they were and how inspired they were that I quit and how lucky I was that I could make that decision and how they wish they could make that decision. And that was what kind of opened my eyes to God, there's so many people that are this miserable. And I would kind of sit and talk and be like, well, why don't you leave? If you hate it this much. And I know it was hard for me. So I understand why people are stuck. But I think, I got less than 1/10 of the reaction I got was bad. The majority of it was, oh, I'm so proud of you. I wish I could do it. You should definitely do what makes you happy. And I didn't expect that. And that was really encouraging. And I think that's what sort of really helped me along the way.
I think you're 100% right. And I love that you brought that up because I was thinking that before you started to say it, that you're inspiring so many more people with your story and by having the courage to not just make that decision, but publicly talk about it and start a podcast about that topic is huge. I mean, 85% of people
I know
are unengaged or actively disengaged with what they're doing. So, 8.5 out of 10 people are like, God, I wish I could do that. And someday I will, but they're regurgitating their conditioned fear or reaction when they have a reaction to you doing what they in their heart of hearts probably realize they wish they could get the courage to do themselves.
Another point to that, most lawyers that you talk to are not happy in what they're doing. And it's funny because you sort of accept that. And so I never even, until I made this jump, I never even thought about it. We sort of just, everybody accepted oh yeah, you hate being a lawyer. So do I, welcome to the club. And then when I quit, and in addition to that, you start seeing, you were talking about the 85%, but it's not just unhappy. With lawyers, I know we have some of the highest rates of depression and suicide and anxiety and drugs and alcohol abuse, and when you start thinking about that stuff, then you start realizing how insane it is that you're staying in something you hate. It's not just oh, I'm unhappy. It's I'm unhappy to the point where it is affecting every part of my life, and I am depressed, and it affects my relationships. And, that has so many other ramifications for your spouse and your kids and whatnot. And then you start realizing like how much this fear keeps us. Like you hate doing something so much that it's leading you to drug and alcohol abuse. And yet you can't get yourself unstuck enough to just try something else. Like it's still too scary to try something else, And so when you start realizing the insanity behind these fears and what it keeps us doing, I think it gives you more courage to be like, you know what? I don't care. I'm just going to try something else. And if I fail, I fail.
I love it. Great stuff. But Goli, it's about that time. Are you ready to play rapid fire?
I'm scared.
Let's do that. What do you think about when you're alone in your car?
Probably the millions of things I have to do that day.
What's your advice for your previous boss?
What's the saying? You attract more bees with honey than with vinegar.
What do you want to be when you grow up?
That's a good question. Actually, I've realized that I don't want to set something that I want to do in 5 or 10 years. I realized I'm going to be different in 10 years, and I'll figure out what I want to do then.
What inspires you? People
that really do what they want to do and buck convention. I still am struggling with trying to not care what other people think and kind of live outside the box and figure out what I want to do always. And I'm not so good at it. So I'm very inspired by people who have honed that skill and just really figure out what makes them happy and do that.
What is your biggest fear?
Living a life for other people, to try to make other people happy.
I thought you were going to say being a lawyer again.
No, that's never going to happen.
Who do you admire the most?
I would have to say my mother. I think she is definitely the first role model I had, and one of the best role models I continue to have. She, despite it being impossible to have it all, she does it all. She's an incredible mother. She's an incredible businesswoman and had an incredible career. So I would love to be like her.
Which celebrity annoys you the most?
Oh, God. Probably the Kardashians. I don't know. All the reality TV stars that is all fighting and toxicity.
How do you define success?
I define success as having the freedom to do what you want to do. I think money helps with that. So I think it's, I don't want to say that money isn't important, but I do think that real success is being able to wake up and plan your own day and figure out what you want to work on and, spend the amount of time that you want with your family and spend the amount of time on vacation that you want in a year and kind of be able to make those choices for yourself.
All right, last one. You get to share a drink or a meal with anyone in history, dead or alive. Who is it and why?
I would probably say, I know this is going to probably be so cliche, but I would probably say Oprah, because I think she probably has so many interesting stories.
All right, Goli, congratulations. You survived rapid fire.
Thank you. And
before we let you go, what's your number one parting piece of advice for my listeners, and where can we go to engage with more of your content online?
I think my biggest advice, like I said, is take action. I think that so many of us are waiting for this perfect time or the perfect opportunity to show up. And we have all these fears and we think one day they're going to go away and we're just going to see this path. It will never happen like that. The only way to get anywhere, there's that saying like the journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step. That is the absolute truth. You just got to start with small steps every single day. And it's incredible how far that can take you. And you can find me through the podcast. It's called Lessons from a Quitter. You can find it at lessonsfromaquitter.com or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also follow along on Instagram and Facebook at Lessons from a Quitter or on Twitter at Quitter Podcast.
Great stuff. And I really appreciate your time and being so open about your story. I'm 100% on board with the idea that you're going to inspire a hell of a lot more people than you ever offended by having the boldness and the courage to go out and do what makes you happy, and to hell with everybody else. So I applaud you for not just making that decision, but for making a platform and building a platform around it to encourage other people to live their life on their terms. Because hey guys, we only get one crack at this thing.
Well, thank you so much. That means a lot to me. And thanks for having me. I had a lot of fun today.
It was a blast. We'll do it again sometime. Thank you. And there you have it. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Goli Kalkhoran. I just love this notion of the sunken cost fallacy because so many of us feel that way. Maybe you went to school for something specific like law, like Goli did, or maybe you're just too far down the path in your own mind. You just assume that, hey, I can't start over now. I'm X number of years down this road. And so many of us just feel like we don't have a choice. And sometimes someone really has to shake us and remind us that we only have one shot at this life. and that the world really needs us to be in our most powerful state in order to contribute and honor this gift that we've been given to wake up each and every day and go spend our time doing something really, really important. Purpose, impact, legacy, like these are the things that we should be chasing. And I really commend Goli for having the courage to make the moves that she's made. And if her story inspired you like it did me and you want to hear more like it, be sure to check out her podcast, Lessons from a Quitter. If you haven't yet, please subscribe to the show and make sure you never miss an episode. And if you love what you're hearing, give the Job Lab a 5-star rating and leave a review for us out there on iTunes. Whatever you do, whatever you aspire to do, never settle. Thanks for being here, and I'll be back with you next week.
You've been listening to The Job Lab with your host, Nick Murphy. To make sure you never miss an episode, subscribe on iTunes.